My darling philosophers, welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you are well. Let's close our eyes. I'm singing in my head. I should probably just sing out loud. Or maybe you're just enjoying the silence. Try not to be worried, try not to get turned on to things that upset you. Don't you know everything's alright? Yes, everything's fine. And we want you to sleep well tonight. Close your eyes, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and a deeper breath out. Let it all go. All the worries, all the anxieties, all the questions. Just let it all go for tonight. And see if maybe tomorrow morning an answer pops up. You will know. Why are we here? Not in this time and space and universe, but here at this monastery of Sophia. Why are we here? I want to think it's because she called us. And we responded. It really is an honor to be learning with all of you. I do want to remind you that you should use your discernment when listening to my words. Taste it, and if it doesn't feel right in your own mouth, then spit it out. A lady can do either, and a gentleman, of course. We're here to wander, to search together. For a deeper truth. For something life-giving, sustaining, real. And there are many, many ways for us to do so, to search. But this year we are searching in the works of Plato. So let's read him. Everything's all right, yes, everything's fine. Socrates. Well, Polus, but if this is true, where is the great use of rhetoric? If we admit what has been just now said, every man ought in every way to guard himself against doing wrong, for he will thereby suffer great evil. True. Oops. And if he or anyone about whom he cares does wrong, he ought of his own accord to go where he will be immediately punished. He will run to the judge as he would to the physician, in order that the disease of injustice may be rendered chronic and become the incurable cancer of his soul. May not be rendered chronic and become the incurable cancer of the soul. Must we not allow this consequence, Polus, if our former admissions are to stand? Is any other inference consistent with them? Polus. To that, Socrates, there can be but one answer. Socrates. Then rhetoric is of no use to us, Polus, in helping a man to excuse his own injustice, that of his parents or friends or children or country, but may be of use to anyone who holds that instead of executing, he ought to accuse. Instead of excusing, sorry. Don't execute. Instead of excusing, he ought to accuse, but also instead of executing, you can accuse. That's fine. Himself above all, and in the next degree, his family or any of his friends who may be doing wrong. He should bring to light the iniquity and not conceal it, that so the wrongdoer may suffer and be made whole. And he should even force himself and others not to shrink, but with closed eyes like brave men to let the physician operate with knife or searing iron, not regarding the pain, in the hope of attaining the good and the honorable. Let him who has done things worthy of stripes allow himself to be scourged, if of bonds to be bound, if of a fine to be fined, if of exile to be exiled, if of death to die, himself being the first to accuse himself and his own relations, and using rhetoric to this end, that his and their unjust actions may be made manifest, and that they themselves may be delivered from injustice, which is the greatest evil. Then, Polus, rhetoric would indeed be useful. Do you say yes or no to that? Polus. To me, Socrates, what you are saying appears very strange, though probably in agreement with your premises. Socrates. Is not this the conclusion, if the premises are not disproven? Polus. Yes, it certainly is. Socrates. And from the opposite point of view, if indeed it be our duty to harm another, whether an enemy or not, I accept the case of self-defense, then I have to be upon my guard. But if my enemy injures a third person, then in every sort of way, by word as well as deed, I should try to prevent his being punished, or appearing before the judge. And if he appears, I should contrive that he should escape, and not suffer punishment. If he has stolen a sum of money, let him keep what he has stolen and spend it on him and his, regardless of religion and justice. And if he have done things worthy of death, let him not die, but rather be immortal in his wickedness. Or if this is not possible, let him at any rate be allowed to live as long as he can. For such purposes, Polus, rhetoric may be useful, but is of small, if of any use, to him who is not intending to commit injustice. At least there was no such use discovered by us in the previous discussion. Callicles. So someone else interjecting now. Tell me, Sapphirone, is Socrates in earnest? Or is he joking? The eternal question. Is he in earnest or is he joking? Or the middle ground? Sapphirone, I should say, Callicles, that he is in most profound earnest. But you may well ask him. Callicles, by the gods, and I will. Tell me, Socrates, are you in earnest or only in jest? For if you are in earnest and what you say is true, is not the whole of human life turned upside down? And are we not doing, as would appear, in everything the opposite of what we ought to be doing? For if what you say is true, is not the whole of human life turned upside down? And are we not doing, as would appear, in everything the opposite of what we ought to be doing? Socrates. Oh, Callicles, if there were not some community of feelings among mankind, however varying in different persons, I mean to say, if every man's feelings were peculiar to himself and were not shared by the rest of his species, I do not see how we could ever communicate our impressions to one another. I make this remark because I perceive that you and I have a common feeling. For we are lovers both, and both of us have two loves apiece. I am the lover of Alcibiades, the son of Cleinias, and of philosophy, and you of the Athenian Damus, which is also a word for the people, and of Damus, the son of Pyrilampes. Now I observe that you, with all your cleverness, do not venture to contradict your favorite in any word or opinion of his. But as he changes, you change backward and forwards. When the Athenian Damus denies anything that you are saying in the assembly, you go over to his opinion. And you do the same with Damus, the fair young son of Pyrilampes. For you have not the power to resist the words and ideas of your loves. And if a person were to express surprise at the strangeness of what you say from time to time, when you are under their influence, you would probably reply to him, if you were honest, that you cannot help saying what your loves say, unless they are prevented, and that you can only be silent when they are. Now you must understand that my words are an echo too, and therefore you need not wonder at me. But if you want to silence me, silence philosophy, who is my love. For she is always telling me what I am now telling you, my friend. Neither is she capricious like my other love. The son of Cleinias says one thing today and another thing tomorrow. But philosophy is always true. She is the teacher at whose words you are now wondering, and you have heard her yourself. Her you must refute and either show, as I was saying, that to do injustice and to escape punishment is not the worst of all evils, or if you leave her word unrefuted, by the dog, the god of Egypt, I declare, O Callicles, that Callicles will never be at one with himself, but that his whole life will be a discord. And yet, my friend, I would rather that my guitar should be inharmonious and that there should be no music in the chorus which I provided. Or that the whole world should be at odds with me and oppose me, rather than that I myself should be at odds with myself and contradict myself. Callicles. O Socrates, you are a regular declaimer and seem to be running riot in the argument. And now you are declaiming that in this way because Polus has fallen into the same error himself of which he accused Gorgias. For he said that when Gorgias asked by you whether if someone came to him he wanted to learn rhetoric, and did not know justice, he would teach him justice. Gorgias, in his modesty, replied that he would, because he thought that mankind in general would be displeased if he answered no. And then, in consequence of this admission, Gorgias was compelled to contradict himself. That being just the sort of thing in which you delight. That song, let the world call me a fool, but if things are right with me and you, that's all that matters, and I'll do anything you ask me to. Whereupon Polus laughed at you deservedly, as I think. But now he has himself fallen into the same trap. I cannot say very much for his wit when he conceded to you that to do is more dishonorable than to suffer injustice. So this was the admission which led to his being entangled by you. And because he was too modest to say what he thought, he had his mouth stopped. For the truth is, Socrates, that you who pretend to be engaged in the pursuit of truth are appealing now to the popular and vulgar notions of right, which are not natural, but only conventional. You who pretend to be engaged in the pursuit of truth. Should I feel called out here? But only conventional. So this is nature and convention being put against each other. Nomos and Phusis, I don't know what the other one is. Convention and nature are generally at variance with one another. And hence, if a person is too modest to say what he thinks, he is compelled to contradict himself. And you, in your ingenuity, perceiving the advantage to be thereby gained, slyly asked of him who is arguing conventionally a question to be determined by the rule of nature. And if he is talking of the rule of nature, you slip away to custom. Or, as for instance you did in this very discussion about doing and suffering injustice. When Polus was speaking of the conventionally dishonorable, you assailed him from the point of view of nature. For by the rule of nature, to suffer injustice is the greater disgrace, because the greater evil. But conventionally, to do evil is the more disgraceful. For the suffering of injustice is not the part of a man, but of a slave, or indeed had better die than live, since when he is wronged and trampled upon, he is unable to help himself or any other about whom he cares. The reason, as I conceive, is that the makers of laws are the majority who are weak, and they make laws and distribute praises and censures with a view to themselves and to their own interests. And they terrify the stronger sort of men, and those who are able to get the better of them, in order that they may not get the better of them. And they say that dishonesty is shameful and unjust, meaning by the word injustice the desire of a man to have more than his neighbors, for knowing their own inferiority, I suspect that they are too glad of equality, and therefore the endeavor to have more than the many is conventionally said to be shameful and unjust, and is called injustice, whereas nature herself intimates that it is just for the better to have more than the worse, the more powerful than the weaker, and in many ways she shows among men as well as among animals, and indeed among whole cities and races, that justice consists in the superior ruling over and having more than the inferior. For on what principle of justice did Xerxes invade Greece, or his father the Scythians, not to speak of numberless other examples? Nay, but these are the men who act according to nature, yes, by heaven, and according to the law of nature, not perhaps according to that artificial law which we invent and impose upon our fellows, of whom we take the best and strongest from their youth upwards, and tame them like young lions, charming them with the sound of the voice, and saying to them that with equality they must be content, and that the equal is the honorable and the just. And if there were a man who had sufficient force, he would shake off and break through and escape from all this. He would trample underfoot all our formulas and spells and charms, and all our laws which are against nature. The slave would rise in rebellion and be lord over us, and the light of natural justice would shine forth. And this I take to be the sentiment of Pindar when he says in his poem that law is the king of all, of mortals as well as of immortals. This, as he says, makes might to be right, doing violence with highest hand, as I infer from the deeds of Heracles. For without buying them, I do not remember the exact words, but the meaning is that without buying them, and without their being given to him, he carried off the oxen of Geryon, according to the law of natural right, and that the oxen and other possessions of the weaker and inferior properly belong to the stronger and superior. And this is true, as you may ascertain, if you will leave philosophy and go to the higher things. For philosophy, Socrates, if pursued in moderation and at a proper age, is an elegant accomplishment. But too much philosophy is the ruin of human life. Even if a man has good parts, still, if he carries philosophy into later life, he is necessarily ignorant of all those things which a gentleman and a person of honor ought to know. He is inexperienced in the laws of the state and in the language we ought to be used in the dealings of man with man, whether private or public, and utterly ignorant of the pleasures and desires of mankind and of the human character in general. And people of this sort, when they betake themselves to politics or business, are as ridiculous as I imagine the politicians to be when they make their appearance in their renal philosophy. For as Euripides says, every man shines in that and pursues that and devotes the greater portion of the day to that in which he most excels. Thus for our scripture of the evening. I did wish you a good night, so that's fine. It's dark so early. Philosophy, if pursued in moderation and at a proper age, is an elegant accomplishment. But too much philosophy is the ruin of human life, because it makes him ignorant of playing the political game, he says. Everything's all right, yes, everything's fine. How does one get into philosophy? Why are we here? Again, I want to think that it's because Sophia herself called us. Wisdom herself called us. And you get into it, into her, by responding to the call. I don't think philosophy is for everyone. And I do think you have to be captivated, indeed. By ideas, by life itself, actually. By questions that keep you up all night. If I can answer, why is there something rather than nothing, will folly let me baptize him in the white spring? What is philosophy, I suppose? And maybe even Socrates would not have been able to define her any better than one of his two great loves. I fear I'm a bit more like Alcibiades. But it's because I'm still learning, I like to think. Because I do know that I often contradict myself. For Socrates, philosophy is his great love. And she speaks the truth. Love and knowledge. I'm going to play maybe a little bit with all of this. I've been reading the last couple of days. I forgot to share this yesterday. From the part, because there are different parts and then they have different chapters underneath them. The part on love and knowledge. Love and knowledge. Human experience of loving another nevertheless can grant a new kind of awareness that is not conceptual but interpersonal. Love itself becomes understanding. John often speaks of, he says da'af, the Hebrew word, which is like Adam da'af Eve, knew her, and it's that type of knowing by becoming one, by loving. And this is, most of these chapters on the love and knowledge says the same. It's by loving that we know. And then maybe we can play with that. Why are we called to philosophy? How do we get into philosophy? Why do we choose her? Because there's love. That is so similar to knowing. This knowing that is so similar to love has grabbed us. And there's really nothing we can do about it. Let's see what I have marked here. Man was created to love, and everything else was created to make love possible. Nevertheless, by the work of contemplative love, man will be healed. Man was created to love. Why is there something rather than nothing? We could say that there is not something. That would be a very difficult thing, I think. It's very unintuitive. But the no thing, the nothing, plays a really big role in a lot of mystical views and even normal traditions. Traditional, what did I mark here? Oh, that. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, yes. The underlyingness of nothing, that everything actually, come on. This is not a strange idea to you. Everything actually ends in nothing. My personal experience with this. And I did not really believe in the nothing, the no thing. Well, no, that's not true. I've done meditations. Maybe I've told this story before, now that I think about it. Oh, well. If I forgot it, chances are you forgot it as well. As once I was in a practice with John and a group of other people, And he led a meditation. Oh man, I now forget the name of the type of meditation. But it's about inquiring. So you ask a question and you wait for answers to come up. Maybe this whole predictive texting that I'm doing in my head at the beginning of every session stems from that. And the prompt that we had to use that day was, who am I? Who are you? Who am I? And immediately the answer that came to me is no one. And then you get an answer and then you're supposed to say, yes, thank you. But who am I really? And then going deeper and deeper and deeper. I think I've said this before. I'm a very impatient person. So I think also my spirit just went to the depths immediately. No one. I am no one. No thing. Not. And I very much did not experience it as like, oh, I'm a nobody. Not that at all. It's completely that freedom in not being, but in a beautiful way, not in a morbid way. I am no one. What is the Game of Thrones character that had to become no man so that she can change faces? Arya. Oh, I forgot now. Something like that almost. But I didn't manage to develop the ability to switch faces. Though on a bad day, I guess and on a good day, I'd also look different. And that's just how life is. So that's the one way you can go. Really, there is not something. That seems to contradict everything we held to be true. But in the section that we just read, Socrates said, well, if philosophy says, but I'm not speaking these words on behalf of my lady. I'm just throwing it out there from myself. The other way we can go is through a myth. I don't really know how to begin it, for there truly to be nothing in the beginning. So I almost want to say, let us assume that I am beginning at the beginning. Before the beginning, when there was no time, no matter, not any something, there was this love and knowledge, the desire to know, the desire to know. And maybe the desire is as stubbornly carnal as I am, and refused any knowledge, any divinity, unless it comes in human form. Or in form, in matter, in time. there had to be separation. There had to be parts so that the whole could know itself and be known. I know that doesn't really make sense, and there's a lot of gaps in that myth. But remember, it's a myth. It's supposed to be gappy. What else do we have here? The symbol of the day was a door. I opened at a door. And the key was like 2 pages later, and I read that as well because of the song that was stuck into my head yesterday. And both have something to do with transformation, because a door is an entry into a new, and to be able to enter the new, you need to unlock the door. That does make me wonder, if you have a brand new key, what have you been up to? I think I might speak of this tomorrow, because I'm not going to have much time to read tomorrow. Maybe I'm just going to read one part of the Tao Te Ching of today, because it's one of those, the Tao could be nothing or everything. Seeing into darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. This is called practicing eternity. I see the passage that I marked also in this book has to do, is related to my thanking the kind comment that you're learning with me, but reminding that I myself still know nothing. So if you find anything of worth in my words, it's on you. Someone can show others the way he knows to be true from hearing, even if he himself has not walked the path. But the person who advances by sight is more secure. Whatever I have written or said will remain less certain, for I have yet to taste how sweet is the Lord. Farewell, and pray for me, my most dear Father. I am yet to taste the truth. Sophia herself will guide your way.